Welcome back to Speak More Fluently.
Great to be here.
So have you ever had that feeling, you're talking in English, the words are coming out, but it just feels flat, like you're not really connecting?
Oh, definitely. It happens. You feel like you're just broadcasting, not really having a conversation.
Exactly. So today, we're going to dive into that. How do we turn those kind of one-way streets into proper dialogues?
Yeah, making them engaging, making them feel alive.
We've got some, I think, really practical techniques, things you can use right away to, hold attention, make sure people get what you're saying.
And build those connections, which is, well, arguably just as important as the fluency itself, right?
Totally. It's about confidence, too, feeling like you can actually interact, not just speak at someone.
Right. It's easy to focus just on the grammar, the vocab lists, and look, those are super important, no doubt. But that actual back and forth, the dance of conversation, that often gets a bit missed, how you actually draw people in.
Okay, so let's unpack that. First big tool, questions. Seems obvious, but maybe not.
Well, yes and no. We all ask questions, but how we ask them makes a massive difference. It's about sparking something, not just getting data.
Right. It's not just finding out if their class was good.
Exactly. Asking, was your English class good? What do you usually get?
Yeah. No. It was okay. Pretty much a dead end.
Right. But what if you ask something like, what's one thing you found really interesting or maybe challenging in your English class lately?
Ah, okay. That's different. That's asking for a little story almost.
Precisely. It opens a door. It invites them to share something personal, an insight, and that's where the richness comes from.
And when someone shares like that, you feel closer to them, don't you? More connected.
That's the key. That feeling of connection is what makes it engaging. But on the flip side, sometimes you do need a quick answer.
Like checking, if you're making sense.
Exactly. If you've explained something, maybe something a bit complex, a simple, does that make sense so far? Or did that example land okay? Is invaluable.
Yeah, the quick check-in stops you going off track if someone's lost, avoids those awkward moments later when you realize they didn't get point one.
Keeps everyone on the same page. So you've got the big open questions for exploring and the tighter closed questions for clarity. What about those weird ones that don't really expect an answer?
Well, you mean like rhetorical questions?
Yeah. Like, who here doesn't want to feel more confident speaking English? Nobody's going to shout out me.
Hopefully not.
But what it does, subtly, is it gets everyone nodding along mentally. It creates a kind of shared feeling or reinforces a point without needing a verbal reply.
It pulls people in quietly, plants an idea. Okay. And what about keeping things moving? I find follow-up questions are just vital.
Oh, absolutely essential. It shows you're actually listening, right? Not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Totally.
Someone shares something and you say, oh, that's interesting. Could you tell me a bit more about that? Or why do you think that happened?
Yeah, it validates what they said. Makes them feel like, okay, they actually care about my answer.
And that builds rapport, that sense of, mutual understanding and friendliness. Crucial stuff.
Okay, so questions are key, but asking the question is only half of it, right? There's that moment after you ask, the silence, which can feel weird.
It really can, especially if you're not used to it. But think about it. If you've asked a decent, open-ended question, the other person needs a second.
Especially if they're translating in their head, maybe?
Absolutely. They need to process the question, find the words, structure the thought. You got to give them that space.
So how long is long enough?
Yeah.
Without it just feeling painful, like you've lost the connection.
It's funny, like 2 or 3 seconds can feel really long when you're the one waiting.
Yeah.
But often that's all it takes. And you can even signal it, avoid the awkwardness. You could say something like, that's a good question. Take a moment to think about that. It sort of frames the pause, makes it intentional.
Ah, okay. Like giving permission for the silence.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Takes the pressure off a bit.
Exactly.
So beyond the words and the pauses, our bodies are talking too, aren't they? Nonverbal stuff.
Constantly. Even if we don't realize it, think about eye contact.
Yeah, crucial. If someone's looking all over the place, it feels like they're not really there.
Right. Making eye contact says, I'm with you, I'm engaged. It directly invites them into the conversation.
Okay. What else? Nodding.
Simple, but effective. Shows you're tracking, you agree, encourages them to continue. It's like a little green light.
And posture. I always hear about open posture.
Yeah, things like not crossing your arms, maybe leaning in just slightly. It signals approachability. Makes you seem open to hearing what they have to say.
Creates a sort of welcoming vibe without saying anything. What about faces?
Big one. A smile, maybe raising your eyebrows when they say something interesting. It prompts reactions. It encourages interaction. It adds that whole other layer.
Okay, so these are great for one-on-one. But what if you're talking to, say, a small group or even a larger one? How do you get more people involved beyond just picking on individuals?
Good question. There are some really neat techniques. You ever heard of think, pair, share?
I think so. Remind me.
Okay, so you ask the group a question. First, everyone just thinks about it quietly for, say, a minute. Think.
Right.
Then they turn to the person next to them and discuss their thoughts. Pair.
Okay.
And finally, you ask a few pairs to share their ideas with the whole group.
I like that. It gives everyone a chance to process, even the quieter ones, and they get to test their ideas in a smaller setting first.
Exactly. Lower pressure.
Right.
And it works online, too. With breakout rooms, maybe.
Good point.
Yeah.
You could adapt it. What else for groups?
Small group brainstorming is another good one. Divide people into little clusters, maybe 3 or 4. Give them a specific topic or problem.
Let them thrash out ideas together.
Yep. Then each group picks someone, a spokesperson, to quickly summarize their key thoughts for everyone else. Taps into more brain power that way.
Gets more voices and perspectives out there. Nice.
And one more, especially good for learning situations. Encourage peer questioning.
So getting them to ask each other questions.
Yeah. Instead of all questions coming to or from you, the leader, get them to engage directly. It reinforces their understanding and they practice speaking and listening. Win-win.
Makes them really active in the whole process. Okay, so interaction is flowing, but how we respond to what people say is also massive, right? In feedback.
Absolutely crucial. You got to show you're taking it in. One great way is paraphrasing.
So like repeating back what they said in your own words?
Sort of, saying something like, okay, so if I'm understanding you right, you're saying that. It confirms you heard them correctly.
And gives them a chance to say, no, not quite, if you misunderstood.
Exactly. It's that verbal double check. Plus, simple positive acknowledgments go a long way. That's a great point. Or, thanks for sharing that perspective. Or, interesting thought. It just validates their contribution, makes them feel heard.
And probably more likely to speak up again later.
Definitely. It fosters a supportive vibe.
What if someone says something and you just don't get it? How do you ask for clarification without sounding critical?
Yeah, good one. Instead of, that wasn't clear, try framing it around your understanding. Like, could you maybe explain that in a slightly different way for me? Or, I'm not sure I quite followed that last part. Could you elaborate a bit?
Puts the onus on your hearing, not their explaining. That's smoother.
Much more diplomatic. And for longer chats, don't forget to summarize now and then.
Just pull things together.
Yeah. Okay, so just to recap, we've talked about X, Y, and Z. Helps everyone stay on track. Reinforces the main points. Like hitting save mentally.
Okay. Loads of techniques for the interaction part. But what about the stuff we actually say? Can we shape our content to naturally invite engagement?
Big time. Using relatable examples is huge. Connect your points to things your listeners know, their everyday lives, their experiences.
Makes it less abstract, more real.
Exactly. If they can see themselves in the example, they're way more likely to connect with the idea and maybe have something to add.
And stories. People love stories.
Oh, massively. We're wired for narrative. And if you can weave questions into a story...
Anyway.
Like you're telling a short anecdote and you pause and ask, what do you think happened next? Or how would you have felt in that situation? It feels more natural, less like an interrogation.
Draws people into the narrative.
Yeah.
Clever. And I guess just mixing things up is important too.
Definitely. Don't just use open questions or only paraphrase. Use a variety of question types, different feedback methods, vary your nonverbals. Keeps it dynamic. Stops it feeling, formulaic or boring.
Keeps people engaged because they don't know exactly what's coming next. Okay. Before we finish up, any common traps, things people do, maybe without realizing, that kill engagement?
Oh yeah, a few pitfalls to watch out for. We mentioned overusing closed questions leads to those yes-no answers and the conversation just stalls.
Gotta balance them with the open ones.
Right. Another one, firing off multiple questions at once, like what did you think and why and what would you do differently?
Whoa, yeah. Brain overload. Which one do I answer first?
Exactly. One question at a time is usually best. Give them space.
And link to that. Not waiting long enough for the answer. Jumping in too fast.
Huge one. That impatience kills the pause we talked about. You might cut off a really thoughtful response just as it's forming. Gotta resist the urge to fill the silence sometimes.
Patience is key. What else?
Ignoring nonverbal cues. If someone looks totally confused or like they're bursting to say something but can't get a word in, you need to notice that and maybe adjust or invite them in.
So, being observant, it's active, this engagement stuff. Okay, this is all great theory, but how can people listening actually practice and get better at this?
Practice is everything. Role-playing is fantastic. Grab a friend, a language partner, whatever, and just practice different conversation scenarios. Try out asking different question types. Practice pausing.
In a safe space, yeah.
Yeah,
Takes the pressure off doing it live the first time.
for sure. Another thing, maybe a bit scary, but super useful, record yourself.
Ooh. Listen back to your own conversations.
Yeah, you'll notice things you totally miss in the moment, like, oh, I cut them off there, or, maybe I could have asked a follow-up question there. Gives you that objective view.
I can see that being really insightful, even if slightly cringe-inducing at first.
Maybe. And finally, just ask for feedback.
Yeah.
If you have people you talk to regularly in English, ask them honestly, hey, how do our conversations feel? Do you feel engaged? Anything I could do differently?
That takes a bit of courage, but could give you gold.
Direct input is often the best.
So it boils down to being conscious, being intentional, and just practicing. This has been really, really helpful.
Yeah, the main takeaway, I think, is that this isn't some magic talent, engaging people. It's a skill. You can learn it. You can develop it.
It's about thoughtful questions, active listening, smart responses, creating that real connection.
Exactly. It's an exchange, not a monologue.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening right now, here's a little challenge. Pick one thing, just one or two of these ideas we talked about.
Maybe pausing longer or asking one more follow-up question.
Yeah, and try it in your very next English conversation. See what happens. Notice the reaction. You might just be surprised how much more connected you feel, how much richer the conversation becomes.
Definitely. And maybe that leads us to a final thought for you to ponder. How might really focusing on these interactive skills not just boost your fluency on paper, but actually, deepen the relationships you build when you communicate in English?
Good question. It's about more than just the language, isn't it? It's about the people.
It really is. It's about that human connection.